Thanks everyone so much for jumping on the Sortly full product overview and demonstration. In today's demo, we're going to focus heavily on the web version of the software, and towards the end, we're also going to provide you with a little mobile demo as well, giving you some insight on the mobile application. Now to start off, the web version of the software, you're going to use your favorite web browser. You can log in through sortly.com. If you just go to the sortly.com, at the top right, there's the opportunity for you to click on the login button, and that will allow you to have access to your account specifically. Once you're logged in, you're going to see your backend that looks very similar to this. Now you'll notice you have three main channels here. You have your left-hand panel, which is your main navigation. Your middle panel here is going to be for your folder structure, and then your right-hand panel over here, this is going to be where you'll interact with most of your inventory items on a day-to-day basis. Now in this middle panel here, we're going to start in the Items tab, and we'll go through each of these tabs individually so we can walk you through those settings. The Items tab is where you're going to spend about 90 to 95% of your time within the Sortly application. Now in the middle panel here, this is where your folder structure will reside. Now specifically on this side of things, Sortly, before we jump into this too far, Sortly is built around a two-premise system. One is for items and then one is for folders. Folders typically represent a category. It could be a location, a person, or a vehicle. And then inside of a folder, you would either have subfolders to narrow that information down a little bit further, or you would ultimately have your inventory items. Now you'll notice to the left-hand side, every single item here has a caret. So if we think of this like a stepping stair, the further you go down the stairs, the more specific your inventory is going to get. So feel free to build out folders as needed on your side of things. Now on the right-hand panel here, this is where you'll actually be able to interact with your inventory. You'll kind of be able to see we have two folders here, but we also show those folders here. Up at the top, a couple high-level things that we'll jump into before adding our first item. First and foremost, you have a search bar available to you here. This is going to be more of a generic search. You can search for the item name, custom notes. You can have a notes field, a custom field, pretty much any generic term you can search for here. If you have multiple filters that you wish to apply for a search, I highly advise jumping into the advanced search here, and we'll cover that briefly a little bit later on in this demonstration. Now, to the right of this, we do have a scanner mode. We'll talk a little bit more about this later in this demonstration, but the scanning functionality enables you to use a handheld scanner in the event that you're using the version Ultra or Enterprise. The lower tier versions will not have access to that. And then right below the search bar, you have some high-level analytics. Currently, we indicate that we have two folders at this level. We currently have 0 items at this level. We have a total quantity of about 21,000 units and a total monetary value among all of our folders of about $1.2 million. To the right-hand side, right below the Add New button, we have the ability to change our sort order. So there's a couple different orientations you can flip through here, so feel free to select from these different options. To the right of this, there is the 4 squares. This allows you to actually change the layout type. So there is the opportunity to go from a grid view to more of a list view, as well as a table view. So if you're more comfortable with like an Excel type layout, you can view this as the table view. This has a couple unique benefits about it, specifically being if you click on this little gear here, you can actually reorder the fields and then hide any fields that aren't relevant. So if we wanted to hide a specific field, just simply uncheck that and apply the filters, and that's going to hide that field from being displayed. Another thing I want to highlight is about the list view specifically. One of the benefits here is that you get some additional information on this right-hand panel here, but also if you go to the sort function, you're now going to be able to filter by any of the default or custom fields that you've been able to create within the platform. So definitely an added benefit here. Feel free to utilize that view if you wish to have those additional orientations. Now let's go ahead and jump into adding our first item into the system. So in order to add an item, all we have to do is click on the Add New button, and we can either click on Add an Item or Add a Folder. Now in this case, I'm going to click on the Add Item, and it's going to pop open a initial quick add view, if you will. Now before I move forward here, I do want to highlight that most customers are going to import their data via a CSV file or an Excel spreadsheet. This is going to save them a ton of time on their end with getting hundreds, if not thousands, of items imported into the system. However, in the event that you don't have that sheet, you can, of course, add items manually. It just takes a little bit longer of a process to do so. So do keep that in mind on your side of things. Now, in this case here, I'm going to go ahead and click on the Show All Fields because I want to show all of the features and functionalities of adding an item, not just the limited view that we see here. So I'm going to click Show All Fields. Now this is going to kick us into the back end of adding an item. So at this point here, all that's required inside of Sortly for you to create an item is an item name and a quantity. Anything outside of that is going to be specifically not required. So you don't have to fill in pricing, you don't have to add notes, you don't even have to add a custom field. It's completely optional. So in today's example, I'm going to work with a t-shirt, pretty easy to follow along and straightforward. You'll notice that already the quantity is set to 1. So default within Sortly, you're going to have a quantity set to 1. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and update that quantity to 15. Now you'll notice in the quantity field there is a drop down option here, and this allows you to select from one of our 20 different units of measure. By default, it's always going to set it to units. However, on your side, if you do have a specific preference that you wish to work with, you'll want to set this initially. You're not able to convert your unit of measure after you've created that item. So if you start with units and wish to go to gallons, there's no way for you to change that. You have to create a brand new item. So be cautious of that when you initially create the item within Sortly. To the right of this, you're going to see an opportunity for a min level. So in this case, I can set a minimum threshold for this item that I'm comfortable with to 5. In this example, I'll show you an example of the alert in a moment, but essentially if I was to pass out 10 of these items within this example, I had 5 remaining, I'm going to see a little red banner on my item just letting me know that I'm running low on it specifically. If I want to take that a step further, I can click on this bell icon to enable an alert. Now, the alert can be triggered from 5 different options. The default option is going to be at or below minimum level. You also have greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So you choose the parameter as to when you want to be notified. In this case, I already have the min level set, so it's set to 5. And then I can choose who's going to be notified. So by default, the user profile that you're signed into, that's going to be the user who's going to be notified in this example. You also have admin level users, owners, or members, so you could select those individual groups. Or if you click from the dropdown, you're going to be able to select other colleagues who are part of your organization that you'd be able to pull this data in from. So do be cautious of that on your end. You can select those individuals there. Once everything looks good, just go ahead and hit confirm, and you'll be able to have that alert enabled. And you can also hover over it to see that there's an active alert on it as well. Going down a little bit farther, there's a field for price. So if we type in a price point, it's going to automatically calculate the quantity times the price to give you the value. We support 140 different currencies within Sortly, so feel free to change that in the back end, and I'll show you where you can do that in just a little bit. On the right-hand side here, you have the ability to add up to 8 photos per item within the system. So you can either drag and drop this from the desktop, you can add them from your camera roll, you can take them in real time on your smartphone or tablet. You can also use a web link if you're going to bulk import the data into the system as well. So multiple opportunities to add photos into the system. Now, as we scroll down a little bit farther, there's going to be some additional fields you'll have access to that are default by Sortly. The first one is for tags. Now, think of tags as a way to kind of group items together. This a very common example that you would see. Maybe you have a MacBook Pro, an iPod, and an iPhone. One thing that they have in common is they're all Apple products. So in this example, I could go in and add an Apple tag as an indication, and that's going to kind of group all the items that are Apple products with that tag. Some of the benefits here that you can go in is you can group things based on a location, based on a department, and there's no limit to how many tags you could build out within the system. So in this case, we could say a specific storage room, we could say a specific shelf, maybe a specific department is responsible for this information. And to add a new tag, all you have to do is type in the name of the tag and then either hit enter or click on the create option. So there's very multiple ways that you can add tags into the system. And again, there's no limit to how many tags you can have associated per item or in your system overall. So definitely feel free to utilize that as needed. Now, focusing on the notes field specifically, this is going to be where you could put like warranty information, descriptional data, product keys, you name it, you can fill that in. That's another default field that we offer within our system, so feel free to run wild with that on your side of things. Coming into the last 2 default fields that we offer within our system, one is for adding a QR code or barcode. Now, a little bit later on in this demonstration, I'm going to cover how to create a code, so we're going to skip that portion for just a moment here. But there is also the opportunity to link an existing code. So Sortly supports pretty much any of the existing barcodes that you may find out there. Think of this like your local grocery store or convenience store. If any of your products that you're working with already have a code on them, I would highly recommend using those codes since it saves an extra step of you having to print those items out and generating those new codes within the system. So highly recommend setting that up within your system here. So we could hit link existing, and then at this point, if we're using the web experience, we can use the scanner gun, again, only offered on Ultra or Enterprise. If you are on the mobile app, you can, of course, link that through your phone's native camera, so feel free to do that as well. The last option I'm going to talk about here that's default is going to be for item variants. Now, this is going to be disabled by default. Not everyone will use or have access to item variants, so keep that in mind. However, if you are working with things like clothing or maybe other products that kind of fall into this category, you can create item variants in one motion. So essentially, I'm working with a piece of clothing, so I'm going to select from the dropdown. Now, we give you 4 different options that you can build out here, but you can also type in your own attribute where it's flashing the cursor, so you can go in and type in whichever attribute you want. In today's example, I'm going to focus on the one that we currently offer, which is for size, so I'm going to do small, medium, and large. I'm going to do one more option here, which is going to be for color, and we'll do red and white as an example. So basically, in the way that I've set this up, I'm going to create 6 total items at one time. So I'm going to have a red shirt in small, medium, and large, and I will have a white shirt in small, medium, and large. So this is going to create all 6 of these items in one motion for me, and also give me the opportunity to set their individual quantity and create codes for them specifically. So if you find yourself in a position or using products that would benefit from using variants, feel free to toggle this on. Again, it's going to be toggled off by default, and in today's example, I'm going to toggle it off when I create this item in the system, just for the sake of the demo. Lastly, I want to talk about custom fields. Now, custom fields are going to be proprietary to your business. Think of these fields within your system as a way for you to ultimately manage and track anything that you find proprietary to your business outside some of those default fields we provide. So we give you those 10 default fields. Custom fields are really where you can shine and build the product to be more specific to your needs. So a few examples of what you could build out. You have a web link field, a serial number, expiration date, model or part number. You have a size option, a purchase date with an alert for it, additional barcodes or QR codes, a file attachment, phone number, email, a checkbox, a dropdown. You really have a lot of different options you can work with on your end in order to get these items set up specifically in the way that would be tailored more towards your business. Once everything looks good here, all we have to do is hit the add button, and that's going to create that item for you in real time. Now, once this item has been created, you're going to see item has been successfully created at the bottom left-hand corner, and we see that the item is located here. Now, there's a couple things I want to highlight for you before we jump into this item specifically. First and foremost, you'll notice that there is a units of measure associated with an item, where typically a folder is just going to show the quantity associated with that item, so that's kind of a dead giveaway there. Generally speaking as well, depending on if you have tags associated with the folder, generally you won't all that much, but tags are specific more so to the items than they would be to a folder. And then lastly, you see at the top right of this item, there's a little bell icon. That indicates that there's an active alert on this item that has yet to be triggered. So this indicates that once that alert has been triggered, essentially there is an alert on this item that will notify you based on that action. So folders typically won't have that. That's a dead giveaway for an item in most cases here. Now, if we hover over this item, you'll see that there's some additional settings that we'll have access to. The first one is going to be the plus or minus option. This is where you can go in and update the quantity of your item. So if we take a look at this, we have a couple different orientations we can work with. If we click on the minus button, we can decrease the quantity. If we click on the plus option here, we can increase the quantity. And of course, we can type in the new quantity that we want to work with. Let's say, for example, I want to decrease by 5. I just put 10, and that's going to perform that action for me. Now, down below, a new section that we've recently added has been based on a reason, so you can indicate why you're making this adjustment. So for me, I can go in and indicate that this has been sold. And then I can also add a transactional note as to why I'm making this adjustment. So maybe it was given to employee XYZ. We have ABC123 as the order. You can put in any transactional information here that you wish as a note, and that will actually show on some of the reporting sides of things that we'll show a little bit later in this demonstration. So let's just do one real quick. We'll just say order 123 as an example. I'm going to hit update. I should now see the quantity of that item reduce in real time. So we went from 15 down to 10. We also went from $375 to $250. So you see this in real time on your end. Now, if we hover over this again, there's another way that we can adjust the quantity of an item, and that's by moving an item to a different location. Essentially, you're allocating this item from where it currently is to a different folder. So if we click on the Move to Folder option, it's going to pull up a little window for us, and we can go in here and indicate the quantity that we wish to move. So it tells us how many units we have access to. In this case, I'm going to move 5 of those 10, and then I'm going to determine where I wish to move them in the system. So in this case, I'm going to either type in in the search location that I want to move them to, or I'm going to click on the drop down and I'm going to manually find the location. So let's say I wanted to allocate 5 of these shirts to the Los Angeles folder. I'm going to click on that folder and the folder will become red once it's been selected. I'll go ahead and hit the move option here, and then in real time that's going to move the quantity of the 10 that we have from the one area to another. So we saw that move perform within the system here. Now, if we click on the 3 dots here, this is going to give us the opportunity to click on some additional settings here. The first one is going to be the activity history. So if we click on history, this is going to pull in the history of this item. Now, every single item inside of Sortly, and every folder for that matter, is going to have an activity history associated with it. So every single event that occurs within the product, you're going to be able to see a date and timestamp, the activity performed, a description of the action, and then the user who performed that action within the system. So you see that in real time here specifically. Now, if we hover over the date and timestamp, it's going to actually showcase all of that information there. Of course, we can see that the item was initially had an alert set on it, and then when we finally created the item, it was moved to the items tab. We updated the quantity, so remember we decreased it by 5 to 10, so it went from 15 down to 10. And then we also moved a quantity of 5 from the items tab to the Los Angeles folder. So every event that we've done on this demonstration was logged in real time. Now, of course, you can see it on just an item and just a folder. We can also just click on the history button here, and that's going to showcase all of the activity history that has occurred within the account since the account has been created. So this search bar at the top, this can be utilized to search for a specific user. For example, I can search for my colleague Camille, and it's going to pull in all of the data that he's performed within the system specifically. If we wanted to filter by specific actions, I can click on this little slider wheel, and that's going to give me the opportunity on my end to go in and filter based on specific actions that have been set up. Currently, I'm pulling in every single action, but let's say I didn't want to see any items that have been deleted or any deletion events. I could uncheck that and then apply the filter at the bottom, and it's going to restrict the results so it's not showing anything that shows deleting within the system. You can also, in this view, filter by newest or oldest, so up to you as to how you perform this or set this up within your system overall. And then over on the right-hand side, you can select from about 8 of our preset options for date information, or you can even go in and put in your personal date range if you would like. Activity history as it stands now is going to show up to the past year, but we're going to expand that on our side of things very soon, so you'll have much longer time frames than just the past year. And of course, you can export this data at any point in time for your records, should you so choose to do so. I'm going to jump back into the All Items tab here, and you'll notice that since we made that adjustment to our item, remember we moved that item, we moved 5 of those quantities from the initial location here, the Items tab, to the Los Angeles folder. We see that there's a low stock banner. So this indicates that we've hit that minimum threshold. So we got a push notification on our phone or tablet. We also got an email alert to the email or multiple emails on file. And you'll see in the alerts tab here, I just got an alert indicating that there is a active alert for that item specifically. So we see that the shirt is at or below that minimum level or 5. We'll dive into that a little bit later on in this demonstration, but I just wanted to highlight that quickly for you on your side. Now, if we click on the 3 dots again, you're going to see the opportunity to create a label. So depending on which plan you have, you'll have access to create both QR codes and barcodes. If you're on the advanced plan, you have access to QR codes only. If you're on the Ultra plan, you have Ultra or Enterprise rather, you have QR codes and barcodes available to you. Now, if I click on the drop down here, I can go through 2 different orientations. One is for a QR code, one is for a barcode. Today, I'm going to focus on the barcode option. It's just going to be pretty straightforward in terms of setting that up. You can then determine the paper size. So if you're a US-based customer, you can use a US letterhead. If you're an international customer, A4 sheet is our recommendation. And then there is also the opportunity for a label printer. One thing to keep in mind, the label printer option only offers one size available to you. So if you have multiple sizes that you're trying to work with, be cautious on your end of working with that, as it may not fit your dimensions. But if you use a US letterhead, you get a little bit more flexibility. So there's 2 different orientations here. One is about 1 3/4 of an inch by 2/3 of an inch. The other one is 2 3/8 by 1 1/4. You'll notice the main difference between the 2. The larger size does offer the item name / folder name here. So if that data is important to you, go with the larger option. If that's not as important, go with the smaller option. Now you do see some additional label settings down here. These are going to be specific to QR codes only. So if you do want a little bit more flexibility on your labels, definitely highly recommend working with the QR code functionality over the barcodes, including like adding your own logo, things of that sort. However, in today's example, we'll just focus on the barcodes here and kind of move forward in that process. Now, once everything looks good in this view, we'll hit next. It's going to take us over to our printing options. Now, the way that this works within the system is Sortly's ultimately going to generate a PDF file for you that you're going to then open up within the system and then move or print out to the desired printer of your choice. Now, in this case, we have label quantity. So by default, it's going to be set to custom. And here you can go in and put the quantity of the labels that you wish to generate. There is going to be two other options here. You have one per item. So let's assume for a second that we had 3 different items selected and we wanted to print labels out at the same time for all 3 of those items. We could easily do so. It's going to generate one label for each of those unique items selected. And then the last one is for as per item quantity. So if you recall, the t-shirt that we're working with has 5 units remaining. Essentially, that would print out 5 of the exact same label for us. So do keep that in mind on your side. Now, choose label start position. This just gives you the opportunity to choose the starting spot for the labels. Let's assume the first 2 rows are completely utilized, but you still have remaining stickers that are available on your label sheets. Essentially, you can choose where to start that moving forward. So feel free to jump in and select that starting location. You can also include printing instructions if you so choose, and then it's going to, by default, send a copy to your email. So if you do need a copy of this on your end, keep that toggled on. It will be enabled by default, but if you don't want a copy, just simply toggle it off. Lastly, there is some label information down below. You have specific information to purchase labels. There's also some recommended printers. We just send you over to Amazon and you can look at some of those options that we have recommended for you. Once everything looks good, just go ahead and hit create label and it will generate that PDF file for you, which you can then open up within the system. Coming into a couple of the last settings here for the items, and then we'll jump into the remainder of the app. The first one is going to be for exporting your data. Now, there's 3 different orientations that we offer to export your data within the system. You have a CSV file or Excel spreadsheet, also a PDF, as well as a Dropbox integration. Now, we'll start with the spreadsheet here. The spreadsheet option specifically, this is going to give you a way to export your data either in an Excel format or CSV. So the first option here is to export as an Excel spreadsheet, or if you keep it toggled off, it's going to save it as a CSV. You can then go in and select which fields you want to work with. Now, by default, everything's going to be selected, so use this option here to unselect all. You can then manually select the fields that you wish to pull in to the system, and then anything that is unselected is not going to be included in this setup overall. Now, if this is a very common report, toggle this option on here specifically, and it's going to save that criteria for you so you can constantly run this report over and over again without having to reselect those same options that you just worked with. So highly advise using this if this is a very common report for you on your end. Jumping into the PDF option here, so there's about 3 different orientations we offer. One is an album type. We also have a list type as well as a compact type. Choose whichever one you wish, so you can hover over them or click into them. And you'll see on the right-hand side, the preview changes just a little bit. So I'm going to choose the list option here. I'll hit next. From here, there's going to be a couple orientations for export that you can update up at the top. The first one is to add a title page. So in here, we can go in and add our own title page. By default, it's going to pull in your company profile information. However, you can change that if you so choose. You can also choose to have a summary page with the PDF. So this would either be able to summarize your data based on your name or the item name or Sortly ID. So choose whichever setting you wish to do on that setting specifically. There is also the ability to include labels here. So on this side of things, you can choose to include labels and you'll see that they'll be printed out on the right-hand side. And then finally, there is also an opportunity here to exclude photos from the system. So if you do not wish to have photos, you want to save on some ink, simply toggle that option on and that will be removed from the system. As we scroll down just a little bit farther, there is the opportunity on our side of things to select up to 6 fields. So depending on the template that you select, you'll have some additional fields that you can select within the system and pull that data in. And then finally here, there is the opportunity again to remember these selections. So if this is a very common report on your side of things, feel free to utilize this accordingly. You can easily import that or run this report over and over and over again within the system. The last option here is for Dropbox. I'll briefly cover this, but this is a way for you to kind of have a full export of all your data within the system, almost as a way to have a backup. Now, we automatically back up everything for you autonomously. However, if you want to have a little bit more peace of mind, you can create a free Dropbox account and sync that with our system. Essentially what that will do is it's going to export a full Excel spreadsheet for you on your side of things, so you're going to have that file available to you. It's also going to download every single one of the photos that you've uploaded into the system, so a full record of everything that you have within the system. Now again, we back up everything for you automatically. However, if you want to have a little bit more peace of mind, feel free to connect with that free Dropbox account. All right, jumping into just a few more settings here. So we have one which is for cloning. Now, cloning really won't be used all that much within the system. However, it is available to you to utilize if you so choose to do so. A good example of where clone might come into play, let's say you have an item such as a MacBook Pro. You have the item that has all the details that you want, but now you have a second MacBook Pro. You can go in and clone this item, but the reason you would want to clone it is because you want to treat each MacBook as its own individual item, specifically focusing on things like serial number. So in this case, you could clone all the details of the item, and then you can actually change the serial number to treat the item a little bit more unique than the other item that already exists. So in this case, when you clone an item, it's always going to have the word copy after it. You can kind of see that the item name is shirt copy, so we have the shirt that's behind the screen here. It's a little bit blurred out. And then you can choose the number of clones that you wish to have. In this case, I only want to have one clone, but you can create 30 at one time. And then there is also the opportunity here to generate a unique Sortly ID for each clone. So in this case here specifically, if I toggle this option on, it's going to generate a unique ID, making it a one-of-one item. If I leave this toggled off, this gives me the opportunity in the future to merge these items together if I so choose. And I'm going to show you that example here today. I can then choose where I want to clone this item to. I'm going to clone it to the All Items folder, which is where it currently resides. So I'm going to hit the clone option here. I'll hit clone. It's then going to create that clone copy in real time. So here's the original, and then here's the cloned copy. Now, let's say, for example, you end up in a folder and you have two of the exact same items. They share the same Sortly ID, everything like that. You want to clean up your inventory a little bit. It's kind of confusing the way it is. We have a function called the merge function. So if we click on the three dots here, we're going to click on merge. And this is going to give us the opportunity to merge the two items together. So just at a glance, we can kind of take a look at some of the fields. The tags look the same. Looks like there's no data in the custom fields, and the Sortly IDs are exactly the same. So we should be able to move forward here. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. Now at this point here, it's going to give me a warning indicating, hey, first and foremost, this action can't be undone. So make sure whatever you're doing, you're fine with moving forward with this process. It would overwrite any of the fields that don't match, any of the data that doesn't match, same thing with history. So very, very be cautious of this setting here specifically before you proceed. The other thing it's letting me know is, hey, the name fields do not match. Are you sure you want to proceed with this? Now at this point, that's totally fine. I can easily change the name field. It's not going to be a big issue for me on my side of things, so I'm totally cool with that. So in this case, I can go forward and hit the confirm option, and that's going to allow those two items to merge together. We now have 10 units total with $250 in monetary value, and you can kind of see that item now exists here. Now, the last option I'm going to show you within the items tab specifically is going to be the delete function. So if you click on the three dots, you can delete an item at any point in time. We can hit the delete button here. Are you sure you want to delete this item? I'm sure. I go ahead and hit delete, and that's going to move that item back into our trash. Now, one thing to note is that in the event that there is an employee who accidentally deletes something or maybe intentionally deletes something, you'll be able to go into the system and see a history of all your deleted items. So items that ultimately reside in the trash can easily be recovered at any point in time. So all you have to do is find either the date or the name of the item. So I'm going to go to today's date. I'm going to find the item that we've been working with. So here's the item that we're working with. I can hit the restore button here. If I hover over it, I'll hit restore, and this is going to bring that item back online. So you never have to worry about someone accidentally deleting something or purposely deleting something and all this work needing to be redone. You can always restore those items at any point in time within the system when a user has accidentally or intentionally deleted them. So just giving you some peace of mind there. Let's go ahead and jump into some other areas within the Sortly application. We're going to start this process by jumping into the advanced search. Now, the advanced search is going to be a way for you to filter out or add multiple filters to a set of search results to really allow you to hone in your inventory specifically. Now you'll start up off at the top. You're going to be able to see which folders you can ultimately pull into the system. By default, everything's going to be selected. However, if we just wanted to filter our available inventory folder, and maybe we only wanted to do something like, our IT folder and storage B, we could actually filter the results so we're only pulling in data based on those folders. Now, if we scroll down just a little bit on this page, you're going to see that you can search by also the name of the item. So you have a way to filter or see all of the item names within your setup. You can also click on this little magnifying glass, and this is going to allow you to enable that search more in depth for you to type in a result, or you can simply scroll down using the scroll wheel and click on the item names that you want to work with. If you wanted to filter based on quantity, we have the opportunity to filter based on some set units. So if you only want to find items that have a specific unit of measure, you can easily do so within the system. There is also this wheel here where you can put in a range. So items between 1.9 quantity and 0 would pull in there. Or you could do a minimum and a maximum or an exact value. So definitely utilize that as needed on your end. Now, for a minimum level, this is the minimum threshold that we covered a little bit earlier relating to alerts. So this gives you an opportunity on your side of things to select items that specifically have a min level, or maybe they don't have a min level. Maybe you want to find items that don't have a min level and set those min levels for those items. So you can easily go in the system, you'll be able to build that out and set that up accordingly. So very easy to kind of filter based on that criteria as well. Similar to quantity, price also has the slider wheel here, as well as a min or max or an exact value, so you can feel free to enable that as well. We have options for quantity alerts, so you can find items that have alerts set or items without alerts. This is definitely beneficial on your end if you want to be notified when things are running low. Finding items without alerts, this is a great way to kind of filter that data through. If you're working with any date-based fields, the date alerts field gives you an opportunity to select from any of the custom fields that you have, which happen to have date information in them. So if you wanted to filter based on a specific set of date parameters, you can as well. We also give you the opportunity to filter based on the tags that you've created, as well as the Sortly ID for the item, and even a barcode or QR code and notes. You'll notice here towards the bottom, there is the opportunity here for you to add a custom filter, and think of this as a way for you to add any of the custom fields that you built into the system. Now, one of the benefits here of the custom fields is as soon as you've added that field into Sortly, this is going to give you the opportunity on your side of things to now search that field. So keep in mind, custom fields can definitely have some added benefit on their side of things specifically. Now, based on the criteria you've selected here, you can click the Apply Filters option. Based on that, it's going to pull in results for your inventory. Now, you can see on the right-hand side here, here's the results that match the criteria. In this case, we don't really have a lot other than that we're pulling in from the IT folder as well as the Storage B folder. Now, a couple high-level things I want to showcase to you. This button here at the top right, this is called Summarize Items. If we toggle this on, this is going to combine at a high level the items that share a same Sortly ID. So if there are any items that kind of share that Sortly ID, we would be able to see a drop-down arrow here. We don't currently see that within the system, so it's not something that necessarily you have to turn on or off, but it is something that's useful on your side of things if you so choose to use it. Now, another thing I want to highlight here is that if you hover over an item, at the top left-hand corner of the item is a checkbox. If we enable that option, this is going to enable our option for our bulk editing options. So in this case here, the first section on the left-hand side, this allows us to either select everything that we have, all our results, so we could do 49. We could either do just this page, which would be 10, or we could do clear selection, so it would remove it. So if I selected all these items at one time, I would have 49 selected. And at this point here, I could either bulk edit these items based on a specific field I need to update. Maybe I want to update the quantity of these items individually. Maybe I want to move all of them or export this data. Even create labels for all these items at one time. I can even set an alert or clone them, or even delete them if I need to. So this bulk actions bar can help you make those actions in one motion, saving you a ton of time on your end. So just be aware of that. That's something that you can utilize on your side of things. Now, briefly, I'm going to jump into the tags area. Now, the tags are going to showcase all of the tags that you've ever created within your system. Again, the way to view tags is as grouping, so this gives you the opportunity to see kind of a group of items at any point in time. A good example that I'll focus on right now is the tag brown. So we have a lot of fans that we've worked with across different locations. They all have this tag, and you can kind of see any fan that fits that criteria with that specific tag associated with it is going to show in this view here. So again, it's a great way to kind of group items together This just gives you some insight as to where items are located. You can, of course, change the orientation to give you a little bit more insight here. If we go into more of a list view, you'll see this data here. It kind of gives you like what we call a breadcrumb trail as to where these items preside within the system. So you can always have an idea or an indication where the item is at any point in time. Now, if you wanted to add a tag into the system, all you have to do is hit add tag, and you're going to type in that tag name here. Another thing that you can do, let's say you wanted to edit a tag, you can click on the pencil tool here to edit the tag, and you can make an adjustment to it. Maybe you want to add another word, maybe you want to modify it in some way, you can do so. One thing I will highlight about this is if you do look to delete a tag, keep in mind it's going to be removed from every single item in your system. So there is going to be, that tag is no longer going to be accessible for you or your organization to view as it's removed from every single item. So highly encourage you not to delete tags once they've been created, but it is up to your discretion at this point. Jumping into the reporting side. So this is a kind of a new area that we're continually improving on and adding new functionality and feature set to. As it stands now, we have about 4 pre-built reports that are available to you, and I'm briefly going to cover this so we can jump into kind of the final settings here. Up at the top, we have an inventory summary. This is going to give you an overall view of all of your inventory items within Sortly at any point in time. So based on the current selection that I have about 21,000 units that are available and about $1.2 million in total inventory that I'm able to access at any point in time. Now, very similar to kind of some of the details that you saw in the items tab, here you can go in and actually search for the items or scan a QR code or barcode to find that data. You can also determine whether you want to work with a specific set of folders. So if we click on any item or any folder, it's going to pull out this right-hand slider here, which gives you the opportunity to update or modify the results so they're more tailored towards your needs specifically. As you'll see here, again, everything is based around the folder premise, so you select which folders you want to pull in the data from. And then we have a bunch of different options here that we can select in terms of narrowing down our results. So you'll notice all the default and custom fields are available in this view for you to see all of that data. You can see here also, this is going to scroll left to right, very similar to that of like an Excel spreadsheet. So if any of the data is filled in, you can go in and make those adjustments accordingly. The same thing is viewable for this little cog icon. If you want to replace or hide fields in a certain manner, feel free to do so here. This allows you to customize this data. And of course, this is all exportable into a CSV file or Excel spreadsheet. So if we click on Export Report, it's going to allow us to select the fields that we want to work with. Again, you can choose export into a CSV or into Excel. And then if this is a common report, remember these selections. So it makes it very easy for you to generate the reports that matter the most to you. If we jump back into the reporting tab, we'll jump into the second area here, which is a low stock report. This is going to highlight every single item within your system that is currently running low. You'll notice that every single item that has a min level set for it that is running low will turn red, and you'll kind of see that information here. So one thing to note is that the data here, as soon as the item is over that minimum level, so it surpasses that minimum level, it automatically drops off this report. And for the items to even get on this report in the first place, they ultimately would have to have a min level set. If they don't have a min level set, they're not going to show on this report. So do be cautious of that on your side of things. Now, quantity changes by item. This is one of our newest reports. This report specifically is going to showcase kind of information where items are increasing or decreasing and give you kind of a little bit of a graph representation of kind of what's occurred. So if you click into any of these items within the system here, you're going to see the increase or the quantity change that's occurred, and you can kind of see a little graph of this change. So we initially started at 0. We saw earlier in the middle of June, we've kind of had an increase. So on the 6th, we increased by 80, then we decreased by 5, and then we went down all the way to 50. So you can kind of see this insight here. We also have an option here to view the report. So if we wanted to view the adjustments or the transactions that have been made for that specific item, this is going to show you every adjustment and transaction that's occurred here. It'll also show the information about the user. So who's the user who made that adjustment? And again, you have a lot of customization around the date and timestamp, which fields display on this report, and of course you can export this as well. The last report I'll talk about briefly is just for transactions. So the transaction report, this is what we focused on a little bit earlier today. We were working on this transaction report we wanted to filter based on specific activity. And if you recall earlier in the demonstration, we actually made an adjustment to the item called shirt, and we actually added a order number to it, order 123. So here is where that information will actually display. So now you'll see the transaction information. So think of this as a little bit more of a glorified activity history, which is what we were referring to a little bit earlier. This specifically is going to show you the insights that you're looking for with the date and timestamp, the item change or the item name, the quantity change, the transaction type, so what occurred. If there is any transactional notes, used at 123 Main Street, order 123, etc., any transaction notes that your team use, you will see those notes here. You can also filter based on the user. You'll see adjustments to value as the changes are being made, etc. So again, a lot of different pre-built reports here that you can utilize to help make educated decisions on, reordering, finding out what items make the most sense, finding out if users are using too much material, or locations are using way more materials or products than they should be. This is kind of a good indication to kind of see that data at any point in time. So highly recommend using the reporting tab. This is going to give you some insights that are really useful to you and the team. Jumping into the tips section here. So this is going to be where you're going to see a bunch of pre-made articles that kind of give you some insight on Sortly. So we have kind of three main areas that we focus on. Our YouTube channel, we have a good amount of videos that we constantly pump out, kind of showing adjustments to the product, how to do certain things within the product. So highly recommend taking a look at some of these videos here. If you wanted to search for some tutorials, we have some here. Our Help Center has about over 100 articles now at this point, kind of showcasing how to do specific things within the software, so feel free to utilize that. You can view all of these articles or some of them here. If you do ever have questions, this floating help bar at the bottom right, this is always going to be available to you on every single page. So you can always go in here and type in your question. We do have an initial bot that tries to help you. And if we can't answer the question for you, you can open a question directly with our support team. It'll create a ticket for you, and our team will respond to you right away with some answers for those questions. So feel free to utilize that tip section. And if you have recommendations on things we should add, let us know. Again, we'll jump into the alerts tab here. So the alerts tab is going to notify you on any alerts that have been made within the system. Now, the item that we worked with a little bit earlier, the quantity fell below 5, so it's letting us know, hey, this t-shirt is below that minimum threshold. You may want to look into reordering that specifically. Now, on our end, we did see that this shirt showed up on that low stock report, so you can kind of reference that there. But if you hover over this item, you'll see on the right-hand side here, there is the opportunity to mark this as red. So if we mark it as red, it's going to drop the alert off of the system here, so we can mark as red. There's also the archive option. So if we click archive, that allows that alert to be removed from the system. Now, if we click on this little slider wheel here, we can actually enable to see our archived alerts. So if I hit apply, it's going to pull in all of our archived alerts that we've had previously within the system. We'll be able to see these archived alerts over a given period of time. So let me expand that date a little bit, and we should be able to see, some alerts that have been kind of pulled in there specifically. Now, generally speaking, when we look at these different alerts, we can go in and filter based on a specific transaction type, whether they're read or unread. We also do have the opportunity on our side as well to go into the search notifications and filter based on a specific notification as well. So all of this data is going to be fully available to you and the team to kind of utilize on your side of things as these adjustments are being made. Now, clicking on the settings panel, when you click on settings initially, you're going to be able to see all of these additional settings take place within the software. So first and foremost, if you click on settings, it's just going to take you, all of these settings will take you to the same area within the backend. So you can click on settings and it's going to pop open the backend portion of your account. So keep in mind, just want to preface this, that depending on the level of a user you are within the system, you may not have access to see every single field that I'm showing you here. I'm currently an owner level user, so I have full access to everything within the software. If you're an admin, you have most of the access seen here, but not everything. And then a member level user, team member level, is the lowest level user within the software. So you're going to have much more of a restrictive view. So just be aware of that on your end. I'm still going to cover every area here, but do want to preface that before moving forward. Now, to start off, we do have a user profile section. This is where you can go and edit your personal information. This would be your first and last name, your email. You can add a phone number, which is optional. Same thing with job function and your role within the organization. So feel free to fill that in if you so choose. This area is also designed for you to reset your password. So if you want to change your password within the app, you can do so. Or if you don't remember your password, just go ahead and hit forgot password. It will send you a password reset, and you can reset your password within the application specifically. Lastly, there is also the opportunity to log in via social channels. So if you want to log in through your Gmail, feel free to link that setup and you can log in through your Gmail. Or if you already have an Apple ID, feel free to log in through Apple. That's another great opportunity here. You can just hit the link option and it will allow you to go through that Apple link process or the Gmail process. So as opposed to creating an email password, you can just log in through your native accounts that you already use. So definitely encourage you to use that. Now, one thing to highlight on that real quick, SSO, you see that login option often on the web and mobile. That's only offered to enterprise customers, and that's something that we would set up for them specifically. So if you're not on an enterprise plan, you would not currently have access to SSO. So just be aware of that on your side. Now, under preferences here, preferences is just going to be some general insights on your account. So depending on where the account's created, for example, if you have East and West Coast users, just keep in mind you're only able to put like one time zone, so this will be set automatically depending on where that information is created. You can go in and, of course, change that if you wish by changing the drop down from set automatically to manually setting that. The catalog or a view is always going to be set to grid initially, but again, you can change that on your end, so it's preference based. You can determine what you want to have set up there. And then, of course, you can change the sort by to whichever default you want within the system. Whatever you change it to, just save those settings, and it will be displayed in this back end here. Now, under email preferences, if you wish to get email alerts sent to your email address, you can keep this toggled on. If you don't want them, just simply toggle it off. Simple as that. I'm going to keep them toggled on in this case. And then if you want to try out a high contrast mode, you can go in and enable this setting here. It's going to give you a little bit different view there specifically. So feel free to play around with that if you so wish. Now, jumping into the company details section, so this is only going to be an area that you can access if you are an owner level user. So this middle panel here, company details, plans and billing, and manage team is only offered to member level users. So do keep this in mind on your end. If you're not a owner level user, you will not have access to this section. Basically, owners are going to have access to anything related to billing information and company details. So keep that in mind on your side. Now, a lot of this information is going to be pre-filled within the system when you initially sign up for your software. So your company name should already be filled in. Your industry, you can go in and add that if you like. One of the benefits here is you can actually upload your own company logo. So if you want to replace the Sortly logo and branding, you can do so. Your logo will display here. And same thing with your company color. Highly encourage you to customize the backend, make it more tailored towards your business. It gives a little bit more of an appeal to you and your colleagues. So feel free to change the color and logo. And then you can also change your short initials. So when you shrink the screen, it's going to change the S to whatever your company initials are on your side. Scrolling down a little bit farther, there are some general settings here. So you can choose your country of origin. You can also choose your time zone again. You have ability to select from 4 different date formats, as well as our 140 different currencies. So any currency that you want to work with here, feel free to select that, and we offer that opportunity for you. There is also an opportunity here to select what occurs when an item hits a quantity of 0. So would you like that item to always ask you? Would you like it to never ask you? Would you like it to always stay? Basically, if you were to reduce the quantity to 0, should that item fall out of the system, just fall off and disappear? Or should it sit there with a quantity of 0 and then you can restock that accordingly? So this is one of those settings where you can go in. By default, it's going to be set to always ask. However, you could also set it to never or always. So, set the preferences or parameter the way you would like within your system. You can kind of move forward from there. Now, at this point here, you can actually delete your account if you like. So you can go into the system and delete your account fully. You can go through that process. Again, only owner level users would have access to delete the account. So do keep that in mind on your side of things. As we jump into plans and billing, so the plans and billing side of things, this specifically is going to showcase some information on your plan. Now, in this demo account, I'm currently on the enterprise plan, so my billing and backend looks a little bit different than what you would see on a traditional account. But up at the top here, you have the opportunity to manage your plan. So if you click on Manage Plan, on the enterprise side, it's going to ask you to reach out to support. If you're on the other plans, you would have the opportunity to downgrade or upgrade within the backend there specifically. So feel free to play around with that. Up at the top right here, if you wanted to add your card information, you can click the Add Card Information field and you can add your credit card credentials into the backend here. This easy form will allow you to update your payment information and that will be auto-charged for you on your side of things. Under the usage portal here, you do have the ability to see how many entries are available on your plan, as well as how many custom fields are available, and the number of user licenses that you currently have offered within your plan. So you can fill out those allotted seats. We'll jump into the Manage Team section in just a moment. There is also the opportunity here for you to see your payment history. So if you wanted to get an invoice or download a receipt, that information will display in this panel here specifically. Now, if we click on Manage Seats, that's going to take us into the next area here, which is for managing our team. So if you wanted to manage your team or go into this panel, again, this is going to be specific to the owner level users only. So if you're an admin or team member, unfortunately, you don't have access to this at the moment. Each plan is going to come with a set number of user licenses, and that number is going to vary. You can also add additional licenses to each plan, so it just at a cost per user basis. Again, feel free to add additional users as needed. To request additional seats, you can click on the Add Seat button at the top right. If you do have available seats available, or available slots available for users to go in and be invited, you can simply click on the Invite User tab here. So if we click on the Invite User option, it's going to ask you for the first name, the last name, and the email address of that user. At this point, we're going to send that user an invite to join your organization. Now, when they receive that invite on that side of things, they're essentially going to create their own password, and then they'll be good to go. Now, as we talked about a little bit earlier in this demonstration, there's kind of 3 different user roles that are available to users. You have an owner level user, an admin, and a team member. Owner level users are going to have access to everything within the software, including billing and subscription details. Admin level users have access to everything except for billing, subscription details, and company details. So they're not going to have access to anything with more sensitive data. And then team member level is going to be the more restrictive user. So this is going to be kind of more of a limiting user within the system. Essentially, you can make a team member a view-only user, or you can make them an add and update user. So they have multiple orientations they can kind of work with on their end to make adjustments in the system. Now, since they are a team member, we can actually restrict their access. So let's use an example. Let's say they wanted to only access the available inventory folder specifically. We could restrict it so they only have access to the available inventory folder. They wouldn't see the /jobs folder at all. So this wouldn't exist within their system. But they could, however, see everything inside of the available inventory. Now on the right, we can go in and set their access. We can either make them a view only, meaning they can view the inventory, but they can't make any adjustments to it. We can also make them a can edit user. So they can edit the inventory. They have full access to edit the inventory, move it around, very similar to that of an admin, but they only have access to that specific root folder and then the subfolders within that folder specifically. Again, in this example here, since we haven't checked off the /jobs folder, they will not even know that this folder exists within their system because it won't show up for that user specifically. So do be aware and cautious of that on your side of things. At this point, you could go in and send an invite, and as soon as they join the organization, they're going to have access to the fields that you told them that they could have access to. So very nice to set up there. Now, a couple other things here. If you wanted to edit a user, you can click on the pencil tool to edit that user. You can also click on the trash can icon to delete that user from the system. So do be aware of that on your end. You do have a couple options in terms of making adjustments to the users that are existing, such as changing their owner role, removing that user from the system, etc. You have full access and control there. All right, jumping into the last couple areas here. So the first one is for custom fields. Now, custom fields, this is what we showcased a little bit earlier in the demonstration, really focusing on how you can help build the product to be more proprietary to your business. So we have a good amount of examples here that you can kind of see. Now, you'll notice on the left-hand side, there's a little 6 little dots here. You can actually drag and drop if you wanted to reorder these custom fields in any way. There is also the ability for you to, on the right-hand side, click on the edit option to edit the name of that item, and then the trash can icon to delete it. So one thing to be aware of on your side, when you build out a custom field, the setting that you initially set is going to be locked for the life of the account. What I mean by that is if you select the custom field to just show on items, there's no way in the future for you to go back into the system and say you want this to show for items and folders. Or vice versa, if you initially select it for folders, there's no way for you to select that you want it to go to items. So whatever you initially select is going to be the setting that you're stuck with in this case. Now, working with most customers, they're pretty much going to make their custom fields generally for just items. Folders typically don't have too many custom fields, if any at all. Generally speaking, most of the custom fields are going to be item-based at this point. Now, if you want to add a custom field, all you have to do is click Add Field, and then it's going to take you over to this Add Custom Field view. So we have a couple of fields that are already available to us. Depending on which plan you're with, you'll basically have access to every single one with the exception of file attachment. That's only going to be offered on the Ultra and the Enterprise plan specifically, so do be aware of that. But if you want to build out a custom field, you can simply click into the field. You're going to give that field a name, so we could say something like vendors as an example. You can then choose placeholder text if you wish. Typically, I advise against that, but it's totally your call. And then we can put in information as to who we want as a vendor. So we can say Dell, Apple, let's do one more, and we'll say like HP. And then we can also go in and, if we wanted to mark one of these fields as the default, maybe I work with Apple more so than other vendors, I can easily add Apple as the default. And then the most important setting here is the applicable to. So it's going to indicate, hey, where do you want this field to display? Let's say I only wanted this to show to items. So this would be applied so I could go into any of my items and that field would exist. You can also see kind of a custom preview down below. It's just going to give you some insight on kind of what this looks like. And of course, if I wanted to reorder this, maybe I want Apple at the top here. It just aesthetically looks a little bit nicer. I can make that adjustment and again, see that in real time. So once everything looks good here, I just hit save. It's then going to create that custom field in real time for me. It's going to kick it back to the bottom of the list here. And now I can reorder this if I so choose on my end. Now, one thing to note here, very similar to the tags, if I was to delete this field and there was data in that field across the board, I'm going to lose access to all of that data within the system. So again, highly encourage you to set up the custom fields in the way that makes the most sense to you and not delete them in the future. Definitely make sure to keep them on board within your software. Jumping into the last couple areas, and then we'll kind of open it up for some Q&A. We do have the option for bulk importing the data into the system. So at this point here specifically, we have an opportunity to bulk import via your own template, or you can actually download our template. So if we do the quick import, this is for your own template. You simply are going to map the fields to the appropriate fields within inside Sortly. If you're using the advanced import, this is the import that we recommend. This gives you the opportunity to have more flexibility and control on where your data goes within the system. And we even provide you with a template that you can follow. So if we click on the advanced import option here, there is the opportunity for you to click this download button, and this is going to allow you to download either a basic or an expert template. Personally, I'm going to push you into the expert template option every single time, just because there's more flexibility there. The basic template is very standard and not going to give you all the control that you're likely looking for. Just because it says expert, don't get intimidated. It's very easy to follow, and we have a full team that's happy to support that on your end as well. From here, we can go in and click on the export, and then there's the expert template. There's also the option then to select standard items, which is my recommendation. But if you're working with variants, you can definitely feel free to download the variant option as well. Now, one thing to do before you download this template, and this is a very important step, I highly advise that you build out your custom fields as well as your folder hierarchy. So building out your folder structure is very important just because you can port this data that's in the CSV file over directly into those folders, so you don't have to manually move them after you've uploaded the data. So it saves you a ton of time on your end. Highly, highly recommend the expert template with standard items. Download that, use that to import into the system. Once your file is good, you'll save it as a UTF-8 CSV, and then you'll bulk import that into the system. And if there's any errors, we'll let you know of that. So definitely the recommended method to get the data into the system for you specifically. Now, jumping back into the settings panel, there is the opportunity for you to create labels. We already covered this a little bit earlier on, so I'm not really going to go through this, but this process here is going to give you the opportunity to create sheets of blank labels that you can then just peel and stick to adhere to your items specifically. Lastly, there is an option to create an API key. So not everyone is going to have access to this. This is specific to the Ultra and Enterprise plans at this time. So if you are interested in building on top of our API or connecting your existing platform with Sortly with the help of a developer, generally speaking, this is going to be the process to go through. If you click right here, this is going to take you to one of our web pages for our API documentation. And in order to create a key pair, all you have to do is click on the Create Key Pair option. You give it a name, so we can just say test in this example. We can indicate if there is a expiration date, so we could say, it expires tomorrow as an example. Typically, you're going to leave this blank, so you may just remove the date here. You'll hit create. It's going to ask you for to keep this data here. So you want to keep your public key and your secret key. Save this information. This is very important to you and your developer, so you want to save that. Once you close this, you're not going to be able to access that again. You're only going to have the public key. You're not going to have the secret key, so be aware of that. If you ever need to create an additional key, you can, of course, create a key pair, or if you want to delete it, you can simply hit delete, and that removes that key from the database. The last area I'm going to cover here is going to be for the dashboard. And the dashboard is just going to show you a high-level overview and some insights on your account. Now, we're in the process of revamping this, so this back-end section is likely going to change in a future iteration of the software. So do keep that in mind on your end. But just at a high level, this is going to kind of give you some insight that you can reference on your side of things. Specifically, this is going to showcase how many items you have across how many folders. So we have 25 different folders in our system. We have about 558 total items. We're sitting at about 21,000 in total quantity that's available to us, and about $1.2 million in total value. So this gives us the direct insight that we're looking for on our end. As we scroll down a little bit further, you do see that there are some recent activity items that have been adjusted. So you're going to see the most recent adjustments that have been made within the software. You'll see that information here. Going down a little bit further, you're going to see the 9 most recent items that you've clicked into to move, modify, just look into and see some insights. So these are the 9 most recent items that are available. And then lastly, you're looking at stock levels. We have 9 results based on our current setup for our stock level. So we can go in and set one of our parameters with, maybe an item with 0 quantity, maybe it's a custom, maybe items that are at or below that minimum level. And of course, we can apply the filters and see how many results we get. So in this case, I just changed the quantity to 0. I have 57 units that are currently in my system that have a 0 quantity. So a lot of stuff that I need to look into reordering on my side of things. With that being said, that's kind of a high-level overview of the web version of the software. Happy to jump into any questions that you may have, and look forward to working together with you guys in Sortly here soon. Thanks so much.